Okay, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Mike Verletic. I'm the President and CEO of Enterey Life Sciences Consulting. Welcome to our webinar entitled Making Your 2020 Goals a Reality. It's great to have you here. The pretext for this webinar is that in Q1, we all had goals we wanted to accomplish for the year. You may have been aggressive in your goal setting, or you may have followed a similar process to previous years, but either way, you had identified a significant opportunity to improve your business. With the COVID-19 crisis, at a minimum, there was a disruption in how you got things done, and perhaps more than that, it may have caused you to seriously reconsider or even doubt what you might be able to accomplish this year. So we felt that this was a good opportunity to take a step back and share some ideas on how every company can increase the likelihood that 2020 produces the results that will propel your business forward. There's no reason to abandon your objectives just yet. We all have goals we still want to accomplish, but likely priorities may have changed, and how our teams are executing certainly has changed, and now is the right time to ask what we need to do to get one step ahead of our competitors, to continue to think about how we can deliver our best for our patients, and to ensure we are still focusing on the right objectives that will drive us through 2020 and beyond. Quickly, to cover logistics, we have planned our total time today to be 45 minutes. Our presentation will be about 25 minutes, and the remainder of the time will be focused on questions. We welcome any questions you might have. Please feel free to enter them into the question panel, which you should see at the bottom of your screen. We'll curate the questions during the session and address as many as we can at the end. If there are any that you prefer to discuss privately, simply indicate that in your submission. Now, there are a number of people on the call, so we'll do our best to get as many questions answered as possible, but please do enter your questions, and if we don't get to them, we'll follow up afterwards with an email. All right, let's jump in and get started. Our objective today is to provide some meaningful and practical guidance on moving through this challenging time and improving for the future by incorporating a systems approach of people, process, and technology. Right now, every business is looking to adapt to the new normal, even though we don't quite know what that is yet. Our intent today is to give you some practical guidance on how to navigate the rest of this year and beyond. Whether you consider this the new normal or just the new normal for now, we intend to share how you can apply problem solving and portfolio management techniques to get your projects back on track. So if you're charged with keeping goals on track for the rest of the year, you probably have a number of projects that need to get refocused in order to achieve their original objectives. If your priorities have changed, you'll want to realign your projects and your teams to ensure the right work is being focused on now. If navigating through changing priorities has been a past challenge with your organization, you'll benefit from techniques shared in this webinar that have helped other leaders like yourself simplify their life and reduce frustration. Through the course of this webinar, we'll highlight project portfolio management techniques, as well as lean tools and methods that can be applied as you navigate the rest of this year. As a brief introduction to Enterey, I'll simply share that we've been helping clients in the life sciences industry manage projects since 2002. By using the strength of people to drive transformation projects, we have served our clients by leading or assisting in nearly 400 initiatives, ranging from short-term, crisis-driven projects to multi-year, multi-consultant engagements that solve tough operational issues. In the next 25 minutes, you'll hear examples of how Enterey has helped one of our clients dramatically increase efficiency and lower costs of their PPM program, all the while achieving greater visibility to projects for their executive leaders. At this point, I'd like to introduce you to John Kiecki, one of Enterey's consultant managers, who will be leading you through this webinar. John is a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt with over 25 years experience in solving complex operational problems and delivering results by focusing on the portfolio and project management concepts that we will be discussing today. During his career at companies like Beckman Coulter, J&J, and Quest Diagnostics, John has led a broad range of cross-functional teams across multiple disciplines. Through his work, he has helped companies reduce costs, increase productivity, and decrease cycle times. He enjoys working to identify opportunities to increase efficiency and also believes strongly in the necessity of establishing a sustainment plan to ensure lasting results. Throughout this webinar, John will present some hands-on, tactical examples of techniques that you can apply right away. John will share elements of his experience, including lean management perspectives, to provide guidance on how you can navigate the remainder of this year and going into 2021. Without further ado, I introduce John Kiecki. Take it away, John.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you to everyone for giving me this opportunity to share my experience and Enterey's approach with you. At Enterey, we believe that a project is a problem scheduled for a solution. So whether you are directly affected as a project manager, project portfolio leader, project sponsor, or stakeholder, whose critical projects are now delayed, on hold, or canceled, everyone in your organization will eventually feel the impact of sudden stoppage of projects because those projects were problems scheduled for a solution. Those projects may be considered non-essential today, but they were most certainly justified and approved because they were believed to be value-added enablers to higher efficiency and effectiveness in the future. Now that the environment for you and your teams has changed and will continue to change, whether you've been sent home to work temporarily or reorganized in some way, the first what to do is to create a plan or roadmap for your project portfolio management or PPM program. So let's walk through this at a high level. There are 3 stops along the way: assess your goals, get back on track, and measure performance. And with any journey, you need that feedback loop so you can course correct in as close to real time as possible. And right now, that feedback loop includes the other factors that affect you and your teams, like stay-at-home orders, how schools and businesses are guided to open, and changes in your company's policies. So, and after we walk through the roadmap, we'll review a case study that demonstrates how we use a problem-solving project management approach to re-engineer clients' PPM programs for increased efficiency and effectiveness. As we are suggesting these 3 stops along the way, let's talk about the first one, assessing your 2020 goals. Your goals should drive your solutioning around all the resources, including people, process, and technology. Given the COVID-19 pandemic, have you gone back to leadership and confirmed that your 2020 goals are the same? Many companies will be working to the same 2020 goals they started with, but will be making significant changes to the organization and the nature of work to still make those goals. And this is a key point you need to understand. You need to know and understand if and how those goals have changed, and you need to do that right now. Have you thought about what resources you will need and what barriers will need to be removed to prioritize and support the people, process, and technology accomplishing your new goals? Use whatever process you have in place now to do this, or consider getting external resources to help. How does your PPM program allow for projects that surprise you? And do you have quick access to the use of external resources, such as supplier representatives and consultants, to swarm where you don't want your current resources to be distracted? If your process does not create a stable project portfolio and it feels like you're constantly reprioritizing or reworking the list, then the process is defective by definition, which is a lean waste. If you have too many approvers for prioritization, then this is the lean waste of overprocessing, and probably also the lean waste of excessive waiting. So once you have your goals set and the priorities for the remainder of the year, here's another what to do. Get your team back on track in a robust, process-driven, results-oriented way by focusing on the continuing crisis and not just deferring to try to deal with problems after the crisis is over or when things stabilize, because they won't stabilize for very long. And one thing we know right now, the latest is the crisis will continue until a vaccine is developed and herd immunity is achieved. So you'll need to move through the barrier of working remotely and being focused on the technology to being productive and getting back on track without the focus on technology. We've got to assume by now your teams are at least competent on video teleconferencing, VPN access, etc., with one really big caveat. As a manager, be open to considering specific circumstances that may hamper an individual's productivity. Those become real opportunities for you to go above and beyond as a leader by learning about and helping to solve an individual's challenges. Understand the difference between measuring your team's activity versus productivity, right? So activity is, are they attending all the calls or video teleconferences? Or are they working in Microsoft Word or some other program like they're supposed to be? I know of some companies that are monitoring this activity as an indicator of what they believe is productivity. However, productivity is, did they deliver their high quality, tangible work product on time? You should expect your team to be more productive in a positive way so that you are not underutilizing their talents for time management, which is another lean waste. Remember, project managers are dedicated change agents by definition. So they're going to be open to your ideas, especially when you convey your positive intent. And in preparation for this presentation, I attended several webinars promoting working from home technologies like video teleconferencing, and I heard leaders and consultants alike say, you should expect your employees' productivity to decrease when they are working remotely. And so, we at Enterey would like to challenge that assumption. When you talk about lean, and multiple studies have shown that your expectations as a leader will drive your behaviors. If you expect increased productivity, then you'll provide the resources and remove the barriers to increase productivity. An example of that is providing access to additional work with reasonable due dates so that people can self-manage the workload. And if productivity is defined as the amount of work product divided by the number of workers, experienced lean practitioners never raise productivity by reducing the denominator, the number of workers. If they did, they'd only ever be able to do one lean project in a company because people would push back. Seasoned lean practitioners focus on keeping the denominator constant and increasing the numerator, the amount of work produced. Companies that expect reasonable productivity increases create a path to it and then get it. And so this is a significant story. I was exposed to a project management office, a PMO of around 20 people, including project managers and Lean Six Sigma black belts, that were directed to move from on-site to remote work to save on real estate costs. They also had a project portfolio management program that incorporated the use of external resources. The company already had experience in moving workers to remote work in order to reduce real estate costs. And because of that experience, leadership expected a minimum of a 20% increase in productivity, which amounts to 1.6 hours per day. This time savings was based on data that they found, reducing interruptions, reducing startup and shutdown times, and reducing walking time to and from meetings on large campuses, which is the lean waste of motion. So in order to take advantage of the increase in free time, the project managers in the department were assigned at least one more project from the PMO's prioritization list, or maybe you call it your parking lot or evergreen list of projects. And as they made the change to working remotely, they realized the expected gain in productivity was very attainable, and they were all able to take on that additional project workload and perform. In addition, as I mentioned, the project portfolio process that was in place addressed the handling of surprise or crisis projects, where external resources, including supplier representatives and consultants, would be brought in to keep the core staff focused on their productivity. So what are the actions that you can take to get back on track? Reduce or eliminate those tasks that don't lead to measurable productivity gains. And by doing so, you're addressing the lean waste of overprocessing. Here's a great quick tip. Set up no meeting days or no meeting afternoons. Now, there may not be any no meeting days for you as a leader, but coordinate with your project managers and work together to create a schedule that limits project meetings to certain days or windows of time. This will also cause an organic review of the value of each meeting. Remember that many stakeholders and subject matter experts are working on multiple projects with multiple project managers. And when you free up those large blocks of time, uninterrupted time, don't be surprised when overall productivity increases. Delegate and coach around working to tasks, not time, without micromanaging. That's eliminating the lean waste of underutilizing talent again. Here's another quick tip. Create office hours for yourself as a leader instead of checking on staff. Remember, they may be accustomed to walking into your office or calling you whenever they need your help, which is an interruption. So I recently connected back with 5 project managers I've worked with in the past and who are all now currently working remotely. They all said the same thing. They find themselves putting in work time when they choose the time that they can work. They are working around their partners who are working from home or significant others like children who are sharing limited bandwidth and computers and small places in the home to work. And they all agree that they are much more productive when they have deliverables that are tangible and not based on when or how much time they spend. Include your staff in planning and in remapping your processes, and communicate those changes to account for this temporary new normal. Consider training and process mapping tools such as SIPOC diagrams, value stream maps, and integrated swim lane diagrams. And so this leads me now to this next point about team dynamics. Remember, no matter what changes in the environment occur around resources or support, you're going to be held accountable to some goals. And remember, just when you think things have stabilized, they may change again. For example, it looks like schools may go to a hybrid model of in-class and online instruction. If this happens, what will individuals on your teams do if they are asked to return to work, but have multiple children at multiple schools, some under the age of 14, alternating between on-site and remote learning? You may need to try new ways of getting work done. So consider remotely leading a highly interactive workshop, one where you would usually require in-person participation. In other words, don't give up on getting people into a workshop just because they're remote. This also may be a great way to test out working with external resources, as they may be more accustomed to facilitating complex remote interactions. So you've reassessed your 2020 goals, you've reassessed your work processes, and so now it's time to reassess your project portfolio measurement system. With your goals possibly changing, ensure that your key performance indicators still apply. And if they don't, then you'll have to redesign some new ones. Measure leading indicators of smaller task completion versus waiting for larger lagging indicators such as milestones to be completed. How does your process encourage candid feedback to the project participants? Usually project managers use some version of a RACI matrix where the roles of your project participants are defined as R, being responsible, A, accountable, C, consulting, and I, informed. And here's another tip for you around that, right? Ensure that the projects have only one sponsor and shift the A, the accountable, to the front. This reinforces the concept that it is actually the sponsor that is accountable for results, not the project manager. Project managers are accountable for the team's management and responsible for executing on their written plans for using the tools your organization has decided to use. But results come most efficiently and effectively when a singular, engaged sponsor is providing resources and removing barriers. At Enterey, we have seen the most successful projects come from clear sponsor accountability. So in review, here's the roadmap again. Assess your goals, reinforce or create those process-driven results-oriented work, and measure your performance. And remember to include that feedback loop to make the changes as needed. Well, now let's put it all together. First we'll consider how to leverage your internal resources in combination with external resources when needed to build and scale your problem-solving project management system. And then we'll look at a case study on how Enterey improved a client's project portfolio management program. So as I mentioned, let's first discuss how to build and scale your program once you've been through the roadmap. Develop a plan to address project priorities once demand picks up again. This plan needs to address people, process, and technology. Work to understand your organization's resource capacity and allocation. Include a contingency for those surprise projects. If you only reprioritize when you're surprised, you may never finish critical projects that end up slipping down the list. And this is the lean waste of rework. And we've seen this happen in several organizations. This is sometimes referred to as rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, right? Your priority list looks great, but your ship is still sinking and goals aren't getting accomplished. As you consider the surprise projects, how will you handle them? This can drive your readiness to scale. And as you transition from build to scale, be sure you have an execution process that accommodates the following issues. Will you hire regular status resources? If so, you'll need to consider the issues of budget availability, long-term costs, and critical time lost in search, selection, and onboarding. Can you partner with consultants or supplier representatives? This path can be very effective as it typically uses a different budget, and because of the quick project startup, it can be more cost-effective in the short term, depending on the estimated project duration. And do you have approved preferred suppliers and consultants where master service agreements are already in place so that they can be turned on immediately to take advantage of a quick startup? And lastly, address your technology. Only after you have evidence and confidence that your process is working and ready for scaling do you address the technology. So now let's take a look at a case study. This case was chosen because this client faced a challenge that we see quite a bit. There seems to be a lot of project activities going on, but leadership doesn't have a complete picture. Well, then you have gaps that develop or duplication of effort as different departments work on similar problems. The goal then is to develop a PPM program that allows for visibility into all project activity, coupled with the controls to keep the project teams focused on the strategic objectives of the company. In this case, here's how we executed on the project of improving their PPM program. Since they already had something in place, we took a step back and candidly challenged the status quo. We needed the organization to believe that there was room for improvement. We confirmed the company's strategic objectives. We worked through the operational priorities, as we reviewed earlier, and recommended process improvements. We established new measures and a cadence of reporting, and we built in feedback loops. When you look at this, these steps should look familiar to you as project managers and leaders because we can map these to any number of methodologies. Here are two, right? In the classic project management waterfall model and the Six Sigma DMAIC model. And as you can see the similarities, understand that the speed of these methodologies are typically only limited by the processes that you put in place and the resources that you can apply. That is, if you have processes that are disciplined, known, and practiced, and appropriately allocated project team members and subject matter experts, these methodologies can work very quickly. And there's one more methodology that I believe has a ton of value, and that's Lean. One tool in Lean is to focus on the 8 ways, which are listed here. And if you notice, the ones in bold, I mentioned during this webinar already. So the idea here is that you're using methodologies from different areas as needed. And let's not forget about the Agile methodology, right? You may not know this, but the Agile methodology typically used for software development was based on Lean. It relies heavily on the Lean principle of single piece flow, utilizing what is called a sprint, whose deliverable is a working iteration of the product. So let's get back to the case study. Using these methodologies, what did we do and deliver? We developed an overall portfolio governance system. We carefully assessed and defined all the projects that were in flight, the current state. And then we automated a portfolio dashboard and documented all the supporting processes, tools, and templates. So let's now take a look at the results that the sponsor was accountable for. Overall, we developed and formalized a methodology for portfolio project management, including establishing a cadence for review and improvement of the project portfolio management program. Leadership learned, in this particular case, that they were only seeing about 10% of the project activity on site because they were only seeing what was read and needed their attention. And even that was on an ad hoc basis. Once the portfolio was stabilized by eliminating duplication and gaps and not using project management resources on simple departmental improvement activities, leadership was able to review 100% of the projects on a periodic basis. The files for the portfolio's 35 projects that were then running existed in different formats in different locations with links. We created a file in Smartsheet that integrated all the information contained in the files into one organized system, reducing the files from 137 to 1. And while Enterey, has done a lot of client work in Smartsheet lately, we can tailor the solution to any technology such as Microsoft Excel, Project, SharePoint, Power BI, or any dedicated PPM systems such as PPM Pro, Instantis, Microsoft Enterprise Project Management. What this demonstrates is that the true value is in the process and the people, not the specific technology. The on-time delivery of status reports increased by more than 3-fold. And lastly, there was an estimated savings of $650,000 over 5 years associated with the opportunity cost savings in the management of the portfolio management process. In other words, a significant amount of management time was saved so they could focus on additional issues. And this estimated savings did not include the time savings experienced by the projects themselves. So with that, we hope you learned something that you could apply today to help you solve a problem that's been assigned a schedule and get and keep your projects and portfolio back on track. And we'd like to take some questions now, and I'd like to turn it back over to Mike.
All right, thank you, John. That was great. Really appreciate that. Let's jump in. We do have a handful of questions here. Before we get to questions, just wanted to do a quick time check, and I think we're right on schedule. We do have just a few minutes here to address some questions. If we don't get to your questions, we'll follow up with you afterwards, or feel free to reach out to us directly. Lastly, I just wanted to mention, if you are curious about how some of the techniques that John spoke of could benefit your organization, please feel free to reach out to Ashley Chris. Her contact information is here on the screen. We have a diagnostic that we can employ here to help you identify ways that you can increase visibility, improve your resource utilization, or otherwise reduce your cost by implementing some of these techniques. So that consists of a short conversation, and we kind of feed back a diagnostic evaluation that will share some of those benefits with you. Let's jump into some questions. The first one here coming in is just around, how do you get all your team members on board? So John, question was, how do you recommend applying these techniques when most of our team are not trained on Lean or Six Sigma?
Let's see. Okay, so I think I would say this depends on how the client thinks they want to handle it. With teams that are mature with regard to project management and have been exposed to a project management methodology, maybe something as simple as a 1-hour orientation to the other methodologies might be enough. Or in the case of teams that don't have a lot of experience and the client feels like the project is maybe super time critical and want to keep that kind of training to a minimum, then I would bake those techniques into my project plan, but not necessarily call them out and bring attention to them as being from different methodologies. I guess an analogy that I can come up with that I've used in the past is that if I hire a carpenter that I trust to do some work on a cabinet, for instance, as that person works, he could take the time to explain to me why he uses a particular type of hammer for a specific task, or he could use the right hammer for the task and I would just simply observe and hopefully the cabinet gets built correctly, right? So it's up to the client, I think, to decide what they want to include in the change management communication part of the project to support that adoption.
All right, good. We have one more question coming in here. How long does it take to put these practices in place, the techniques that you spoke of, and how long will it help them to make an impact?
A lot of questions, right? The answer depends, right? I think this one depends on the complexity of the project. Simple problems where root causes are clear and limited may be handled in a matter of weeks with a Kaizen or continuous improvement event. In fact, planning for and having those types of events actually may take longer than implementing and seeing the effects of the resulting improvements, right? Then there are those obviously more complex problems where different levels of root causes, primary, secondary, tertiary, maybe 2 or 3 levels of root causes need to be separated from special causes. And in this case, you may find some quick wins or some low-hanging fruit, as it's called, that could produce results within 60 to 90 days. Or you may have deep systemic issues that will need a year or more to produce some sustainable results.
All right, here's the next question. Do you calculate the ROI of the investment in Lean Six Sigma or project portfolio management, PPM?
Yeah, maybe not ROI specifically, but I would say yes. I can't think of any charters that I've seen lately that don't have some type of financial analysis included. I think what we try to understand with clients is how they perceive and value hard savings versus soft savings. I've worked with some companies that only accept, soft savings on projects that are the must-dos or the compliance-related projects. Those companies, hard savings are required for all other projects. And at their core, for me, the definition of hard savings means that you are now not buying something you bought before. like service or instruments or supplies. You know, I have an interesting story when I get to a question like this around ROI and it'll date I'm going to date myself here, but a good example is in the past when I worked for a field service team that transitioned from paper service manuals and users guides and repair manuals, things like that, to laptop-based documentation. You know, the service team went from carrying over 100 pounds worth of paper in their vehicles to carrying a 1 to 2 pound laptop. Well, we had figured out that the drop in gasoline used across the fleet was actually significant enough to predict, track, and then document as savings. And that's a hard savings.
All right, great. So we've got one more question here. And this is in regards to implementing these types of changes. Have you received pushback from clients or their employees when you implement these types of processes?
Well, as much as I'd like to say no, and that everyone gets behind the efforts and is open to trying new processes and tools that they're experienced with, I guess I wouldn't be very authentic if I said that. Part of a project manager's, or leader's role is to be a change agent, and as such, right, you need to consider a change management plan that includes positively dealing with resistance. We always try to assume positive intent on the part of those pushing back, working to understand their pain points or concerns, and then working to influence appropriately and authentically. And, I think this has worked for Enterey. As over the past 17 years, we have clients come back to us again and again, and we've successfully closed their projects within their organizations across multiple departments, right, Mike, and with changing leadership and with varying levels of support. So I think it's just one of those things. Pushback is just one of those things that we have ways to work through.
Yeah, I agree, John. And I think communication is a big part of overcoming any of those challenges that might exist. So, well, great. So that was the last question that we had. I did want to kind of move now to wrap up our session here. Thank you, everybody who joined. Really appreciate it. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Ashley's information is on the screen there. We look forward to talking to you in the future, but we're going to go ahead and wrap up this webinar now. Thank you very much and have a great day. Thank you, John, for your presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.